You hard-hearted, dunderheaded, obstinate, rusty, crusty, musty, fusty, old savage, said I, in fancy, one afternoon, to my grand-uncle Rumgudgeon, shaking my fist at him in imagination. Only in imagination. The fact is, some trivial discrepancy did exist just then between what I said and what I had not the courage to say, between what I did and what I had half a mind to do. The old porpoise, as I opened the drawing-room door, was sitting with his feet upon the mantelpiece and a bumper of port in his paw, making strenuous efforts to accompany the ditty. Rumpus, tone very, vide, tone very, plain. My dear uncle, said I, closing the door gently and approaching him with the blandest of smiles, you are always so very kind and considerate, and have evinced your benevolence in very many ways that I feel I have only to suggest this point to you once more to make sure of your full acquiescence. Hem, said he. Good boy, go on. I'm sure, my dearest uncle, you confounded old rascal, that you have no design really, seriously, to oppose my union with Kate. This is merely a joke of yours, I know. Ha ha ha. How very pleasant you are at times. Ha ha ha, said he. Curse you, yes. Oh, to be sure, of course, I knew you were jesting. Now, no, uncle, all that Kate and myself wish to as present is that you would oblige us with your advice as regards to time, uncle. In short, when will it be most convenient for you yourself that the wedding shall come off, Come off, you scoundrel. What do you mean by that? Better wait till it goes on. Ha ha ha. Hee hee hee. Hi hi hi. Ho ho ho. Hoo hoo hoo. Oh, that is good. Oh, that's capital. Such a wit. But all we want just now, Uncle, is that you indicate the time precisely. Ah, precisely. Yes, uncle, that is, if it would be quite agreeable to yourself. Wouldn't it answer, Bobby, if I were to leave it at random sometime within a year or so, perhaps, or for example, must I say precisely? If you please, uncle, precisely. Well then, Bobby, my boy, you're a fine fellow, aren't you? Since you will have the exact time, I'll oblige you for once. Dear uncle. Hush, sir. Drying my voice. I'll oblige you for once. You shall have my consent. And the plum, we mustn't forget the plum. Let me see, when shall it be? Today's Sunday. Isn't it? Well, then, you shall be married precisely now, mind, when 3 Sundays come together in a week. Do you hear me, sir? What are you gaping at? I say, you shall have Kate and her plum when 3 Sundays come together in a week, but not till then. you young scapegrace. Not till then, if I die for it. You know me, I'm a man of my word, and I'll be off. Here swallowed his bumper of port while I rushed from the room in despair. A fine, quote-unquote, fine old English gentleman was my great-uncle Rumgudgeon. But unlike him of the song, he had his weak points. He was a little pursy, pompous, passionate, semicircular somebody with a red nose, a thick skull, a long purse, and a strong sense of his own consequence. With my best heart in the world, he contrived, through a predominant whim of contradiction, to earn for himself, among those who only knew him superficially, the character of a curmudgeon. Like many excellent people, he seemed possessed with a spirit of tantalization, which might easily, at a casual glance, have been mistaken for benevolence. To every request, a positive no was his immediate answer, but in the end, in the long end, there were exceedingly few requests which he refused. Against all attacks upon his purse, he made the most sturdy defense. But the amount extorted from him, at last, was generally in direct ratio with the length of the siege of the stubbornness of the resistance. In charity, no one gave more liberally or with a worse grace. For the fine arts, and especially for the belles letters, or belles lettres, he entertained a profound contempt. With this he had been inspired by Casimir Perier, whose pert little query, "What a poet is he good at?" he was in the habit of quoting, with a very droll pronunciation, as the ne plus ultra of logical wit. Thus my own inkling for the muses had excited his entire displeasure. He assured me one day, when I asked him for a new copy of Horace, that the translation "Poeta Nascitur non fit" was a quote-unquote nasty poet for nothing fit, a remark for which I took in high dudgeon. His repugnance to the quote-unquote the humilities had also much increased of late by an accidental bias in favor of what he supposed to be natural science. Somebody had accosted him in the street, mistaking it for no less a personage than Dr. LD, the lecturer on quack physics. This set him off on a tangent, and just the epic of a story, for story it is getting to be after all, my great uncle Rumgudgeon was accessible and pacific only upon points which happened to chime in with the caprioles of the hobby he was riding. For the rest, he laughed with his arms and legs, and the politics were stubborn and easily understood. He thought with Horsley that, quote-unquote, the people have nothing to do with the laws but to obey them. I lived with the old gentleman all my life. My parents, in dying, had bequeathed me to him as a rich legacy. I believe the old villain loved me as his own child, nearly if not quite as well as he loved Kate. But it was a dog's existence that he led me, after all. From my own first year till my fifth, he obliged me with regular floggings. From 5 to 15 he threatened me hourly with the house correction. From 15 to 20 not a day passed in which he did not promise to cut me off with a shilling. I was a sad dog, it is true, but then it was part of my nature, a point of my faith. In Kate, however, I had a firm friend, and I knew it. She was a good girl, and I told told me very sweetly that I might have her, plum and all, whenever I could badger my grand uncle Rumgudgeon into the necessary consent. Poor girl, she was barely 15, and without this consent, her little amount in the funds would not come was not was not come atable until 5 immeasurable summers had quote unquote dragged their slow length along. What then to do? At 15 or even at 21, for I had now passed my 5th Olympiad. 5 years in prospect are very much the same as 500. In vain we besieged the old gentleman with importunities. Here was a pièce de resistance, as Messrs. Ude and Carine would say, which suited his perverse fancy to a T. It would have stirred the indignation of Job himself to see how much like an old mouser he behaved to us poor wretched little mice. In his heart he wished for nothing more ardently than our union. He had made up his mind to this all for nothing. He had made up his mind to this all along. In fact, he would have given £10,000 from his own pocket. Kate's plum was her own. If he could have invented anything like an excuse for complying with our very natural wishes. But then we had been so imprudent as to broach the subject ourselves, not to oppose it under such circumstances. I sincerely believe was not in his power. I have already said that he had weak points. But in speaking of these, I must not be understood as referring to his obstinacy, which was one of his strong points. Assuredly, it was not his weak. When I mention his weakness, I have allusion to a bizarre, old womanish superstition which beset him. He was great in dreams, portents, et id genus omne of rigmarole. He was excessively punctilious, too, upon small points of honor, and, after his own fashion, was a man of his word, beyond doubt. This, in fact, was one of his hobbies. The spirit of his vows he made no scruple of setting at naught, but the letter was a bond inviolable. Now it was this latter peculiarity in his disposition of which Kate's ingenuity enabled us one fine day, not long after our interview in the dining room, to make a very unexpected advantage, and having thus, in the fashion of all modern bards and orators, exhausted in prolegomena, all the time at my command, and nearly all the room at my disposal. I will sum up in a few words what constitutes the whole pith of the story. It happened then, so the fates ordered it, that among the naval acquaintances of my betrothed were 2 gentlemen who had just set foot upon the shores of England, after years' absence, each in foreign travel. In company with these gentlemen, my cousin and I preconcertedly paid Uncle Rumgudgeon a visit on the afternoon of Sunday, October the 10th, just 3 weeks after that memorable decision which had so cruelly defeated our hopes. For about half an hour the conversation ran upon ordinary topics, but at last we contrived, not quite naturally, to give it the following turn.